So for some background, I, 40M, and my wife, Kate, 38F, have been married for 12 years and together for 16. We have 3 kids, a son, 12M, and 2 daughters, 9F and 7F. My wife and I met in college. When I first saw her, I was captivated. We kept smiling at each other when we passed in the corridors, but it was she who made the first move. She asked me out, and the rest is history. Early in our relationship, we discussed our past romantic experiences. I told her that I had 2 previous girlfriends and had been intimate only with them. She said she had 3 boyfriends and had been intimate only with them. As our relationship progressed, I brought up the idea of trying new things in bed. She declined, saying she just wasn't into that and that it wasn't her style. I asked if she had tried it before, and she said no, and that was that. Since then, I approached the topic about 4 times over the years, so it's not like I kept bothering her with it all the time. She wasn't into that, and I loved her very much, so I was willing to compromise. Now to the issue itself. About 2 weeks ago, my wife and I went to her best friend Amber's birthday party. My wife organized the whole thing, so she was constantly running around, checking in with guests and Amber. One of the guests was Julia, another friend who used to be my wife's best friend but drifted apart after moving to another city. Julia moved before my wife and I started dating, so I had only seen her about 3 to 4 times during our relationship. I spent most of the evening catching up with her. After a couple of drinks, seeing my wife running around checking in on Amber, I made a light-hearted joke and asked Julia if she wasn't jealous of my wife and Amber. She chuckled and jokingly replied that while they might have drifted apart, Amber and my wife would never be as close as they were because, as far as she knew, my wife and Amber never had a romantic encounter. It took me a few seconds to realize what she said, and I instantly sobered up. I asked her if she and my wife had a romantic past. My face must have shown shock because when I asked her, she stuttered and immediately backtracked, saying she was just joking. I laughed and decided to believe her, but her mood changed completely, and she was very uncomfortable for the rest of the evening. Her behavior was even more suspicious than the joke itself. After the party ended, in the taxi, I felt numb and had many thoughts racing through my mind. My wife was unusually clingy, even for her when she's tipsy. Back home, she must have noticed I was distant and lost in thought and asked me a few times if everything was okay and how I was feeling. I just brushed it off as being tired after the party, and we went to sleep. But I didn't sleep that night. I kept thinking about what Julia said. Combined with my wife's behavior, it just didn't sit right with me. The next day, my wife's concern for my well-being continued and even intensified. 2 days after the party, Julia called me. Mind you, we never called or even texted each other before. She was just my wife's friend. At first, she said how nice it was to catch up after all these years and hoped we would stay in touch more often. However, she then started asking how I was and how things were going, repeating the exact same questions my wife had been asking for the past 2 days. This call, in addition to my wife's behavior, threw me off so much that the next day I decided to look through my wife's phone. We have access to each other's phones. At the top was my wife's chat with Julia. I read their conversation from the night of the party to today and realized that at some point during the party, Julia had confessed to my wife what she had accidentally told me and that she didn't know I was unaware of their past. The texts were a mix of my wife being angry at Julia and Julia apologizing. After that, they discussed how to resolve the issue and my behavior since the party. So my wife did, in fact, have a romantic past with Julia and lied to me about it. From how they talked, it wasn't a one-time thing. I wasn't mad or angry. I was just confused why she would lie about something so minor. I started wondering what else she might not have told me or lied about. And then I made the biggest mistake of my life. I decided to look through my wife's other chats. I think I spent about 5 hours reading through my wife's chats with her friends, in friend groups, even those that hadn't been active for years. From her friends' group chat, I learned that they often discussed their romantic lives in great detail. However, my wife was completely lying about ours. She bragged about how often we were intimate. We weren't that often, and how adventurous we were in bed, which we obviously weren't. I had no idea why she would lie to her friends about this. Later, I found an old group chat with a different set of friends she was no longer in contact with. Scrolling through the chat for about 5 minutes, I came across 2 videos sent by one of my wife's friends. She followed it with a text saying, "Look what I found." "Ring any bells, Kate?" My wife replied with a face covering emoji, and 4 other friends reacted with laughing emojis. To avoid being too graphic, the first video showed this friend in an intimate situation with 2 guys. The second video was of my wife in the same setting, doing the same things with the same guys. I recognized my wife instantly despite the videos being of poor quality. It was essentially a recording of another recording with an old camera. Initially, I thought she had cheated on me, but upon a second viewing, I noticed details indicating that the videos were taken during college, likely before we started dating. Still, I was devastated. I know it was wrong, and I have only myself to blame for digging too deep, but seeing a video of my wife being intimate with not 1 but 2 guys, doing things with them that I had repeatedly asked for, broke something in me. I didn't sleep that night or the next. Throughout the day after the discovery, I was just numb, responding with yes and no answers, which didn't go unnoticed by my wife. My numbness caused my wife to step up her checking in with me. The following day, I couldn't take it anymore and confronted my wife with everything I had found. I wasn't angry, I wasn't screaming, and I didn't throw a tantrum. I was just sad. When I started speaking, my wife's face turned pale. As I went on, tears started running down her face, and then she started fully crying. To be honest, that's when I got angry. I was waiting for answers for her to say something, but she just kept crying. I felt like I was the victim here, yet she was the one crying. And why would she even cry about this? It still bothers me. Later, she asked if we could talk about it in the morning as she was too distraught at that moment. I said whatever and went for a drive despite her asking me to stay. The next day, she asked me to sit down and let her speak uninterrupted. So basically, I learned that my wife lied about the number of people she'd been with before me, which was in the 20s, men and women included, and that she lied about not being into more adventurous things in the bedroom. I mean, I had figured that one out before, as in the video, she was clearly enjoying herself. Her reasoning? She said she lied about the number of previous partners because when we met, she really liked me, and I appeared conservative. Thanks, I guess. So she thought that if I knew the real number, I wouldn't date her. As for the stuff she refused to do with me, she didn't want me to view her as that type of girl, again bringing up my supposed conservatism as a reason. She also admitted that she enjoyed those things, but only when the partner was casual and someone she didn't love or care about, because those acts were degrading in her eyes. However, she refused to do those things with me because she didn't want me, her husband, father of her children, and supposed love of her life, to do such degrading things to her. She wanted me to respect her and make love to her. When I heard this, at first I started laughing and said that if it's true, it's the dumbest logic I have ever heard. Then I said that the situation is pretty clear to me. She just doesn't find me as attractive as the guy she did those things with, and that she settled for me. My wife vehemently denied it. She said that I am the love of her life, that I am the most handsome man to her, and that our lovemaking is the best experience of her life, etc. Then she said she would be more than happy to start implementing those things in our bedroom. Hearing that, I got angry and told her that I'd rather just handle things myself than get a pity intimacy from her. After that, I made a nasty comment that was out of line, but I apologized for it right away and went for a drive to cool down. When I returned, she asked me where my headspace was. I was honest and said that I didn't know, and that right now I am rethinking our entire relationship. She started crying, and I ended up consoling her. Since then, my wife has been crying and insisting that we can work on fixing this. Right now, I am gathering my thoughts and taking my time to make a decision. I have come to the conclusion that my wife simply doesn't find me that attractive. I mean, I can read the writing on the wall. I don't see any other reason why she would deny me things that she gave and clearly enjoyed with previous partners. Moreover, her sudden willingness to do these things with me now that everything has come to a head only confirms it. So, as you can imagine, this has done wonders for my self-esteem. Right now, I only see 3 solutions to this situation, and to be honest, all of them suck in one way or another. 1. We continue our relationship as it was, and I get not even 50% of what her old partners got in the bedroom. My wife is happy, the kids are happy, and I am not. 2. We might open our marriage. She gets to find someone she enjoys doing these things with, and I get to find someone who finds me attractive enough to enjoy doing those things with me. I know it's risky, but I think that as long as we don't bring our partners home, we could manage it. And yes, I know my wife would have a much easier time finding a new partner than me, but it is what it is. At least we stay together and the kids are happy. 3. We divorce and nobody is happy. I just don't know if and how I can get over this. I can't talk to my family and friends about it because of how embarrassed I already am. So if any of you have been in a similar situation, on one end or another, I would greatly appreciate any advice. Again, sorry for the wall of text. Thanks in advance.